Hello, sweet girls. We hope we're live. You never quite know until we get the thumbs up from Martha or somebody looks on their screen. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you believe we are on step 5? Can you believe that, Leanne, that we're already on step 5?
No, and I'm kind of sad. I'm not going to lie, only because I have so enjoyed this time together. But I'm so proud of our women that are hanging in with us. And so good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Wow, has time ever gone? We've come live together. This is our 6th time because I did the safety one solo. And here we are, ready to jump in and talk all about one of our favorite topics.
Confidence. Confidence. Wouldn't you love to be a woman who felt confident? And so we have given you a bunch of different videos in this module to help build your confidence. Confidence doesn't happen overnight, but it grows, and confidence comes not because you can do everything right, but because you have the confidence to figure it out, that you know you've been able to persevere, that you know you can have wise others to consult and get the next step, and that you will take the next step. And so confidence isn't, I can do everything anytime I want to. It's, I can figure out what I need to do when I have to do it, or I can get someone to give me some ideas on how I can figure it out so that I can take the next step. And confidence is such an important part of development for a child. But if you've never had it and you never got it as a child, now is your season, girlfriend. And so I want to start, Leanne, if it's okay with you, I want to celebrate some wins from some of our Conquer sisters. We put out a little survey over the last couple of days for Conquer newbies to share some of the wins they've had as they've walked this Conquer journey with us. So if it's okay, I'd like to just start with some good news. Everybody can use some good news sometimes, and we sometimes focus on more of the hard things and the things that aren't going well in these talks. And so I want to share with you some of what our sisters are doing that have been positive and the results that they've gotten. So let me grab my, I'm going to go to my other computer and get my glasses on and start reading some things. So Jay, she's 61 years old. She has a great career, and she's in the middle of a divorce because her husband lied to her prior to marriage about all kinds of stuff. And what made her join Conquer was that she was given bad Christian advice, like many of you, to just keep forgiving and forgiving and forgiving, even though he wasn't repentant. And of course, we forgive. We may not be able to do that right away because sometimes we need to process our anger and our frustration and our hurt and all that kind of stuff first. But at the end of the day, yeah, that's something that you want to do, but that doesn't make the relationship all better. What forgiveness does for you is it makes your relationship with God better because God tells us to forgive, and it releases you from the bitterness and resentment you have toward this other person. It doesn't necessarily make the relationship all better. That takes a little bit more work. And her husband wasn't willing to do any of that work. But she felt so confused because she was getting the traditional Christian speak that most of you have gotten. And so it was so refreshing for her to join Conquer and hear something different. So I want to share with you 3 highs that she got over this last week, 3 weeks. One, she's grown closer to the Lord. Because you see, when you feel like God is against you, that you feel like God is scolding you because you're not somehow keeping this marriage together, it causes you to feel afraid of God, and it causes you to feel ashamed before God. And it's hard to go before him when you feel like you can't do what he's asking you to do. But God's not asking you to do that. He's not asking you to keep a relationship together when it's only one-sided. You can't do that. Even Jesus didn't. So don't put that on yourself, and don't let your church put that guilt trip on you. But she said, I got free from that, and I got closer to God. I started praying more. I began to trust that it's not going to be all fixed, and I'm not going to be all well in a moment, but I am getting better. And that loneliness is part of a process in divorce, and I shouldn't feel ashamed or like I'm the oddball because I feel this way. And so much of what we're learning in Conquer is what's normal and what's healthy. And you might not have ever learned that in your family of origins. You might not have ever learned that it's normal to feel angry. It's normal sometimes to feel discouraged. You need to know what to do with those feelings, but you don't need to add more shame and guilt on top of those feelings because you feel them. It's normal. It's part of being human. And as long as we can accept that, then we can take those next steps on what we need to do to deal with it. If we can't even accept it, if I can't accept that I have breast cancer, if I can't accept that I'm in a destructive marriage, if I can't accept that I'm in a down, cranky mood, then there's nothing I can do to work on that, right? And so first step is acceptance. And so she began to accept that. And she said, I am determined to walk through this with God, and he can bring me through it. I've also, this is another win for her. She's been able to help other women in her ladies' Bible study at church by being vulnerable and sharing her story. And she's realizing, just like all of you are realizing in Conquer, she's not the only one in her church. And they're realizing they're not the only one. How freeing it is when we can be honest and real and vulnerable. Even when Leanne and I are honest and real and vulnerable, you guys are saying, thank you, because nobody is like this statue of perfect. We all have a lot of good and a lot of bad in different parts of ourselves. And as long as we can be aware and humbly own that and admit that and work on that, that's part of being human. That's part of being human. Even being a sinner is part of being human. You're still going to sin. That's what we do as sinners. We sin sometimes. It's when we deny it and avoid it and don't accept who we are. And we think, why did I do that? What's wrong with me? Nothing. You're human. You're a sinner. And we do bad things sometimes. And we have to own them when we do them. And we have to work at not repeating them. But we are never going to get to a place where we don't have that. And so when we don't talk about that in church and we all act as if we're all perfect and put on our smiley face and we've got our little perfect family and we're all intact, we're lying to not only ourselves, we're lying to everybody. And that doesn't help anybody. So she's beginning to get the joy of truth fellowship when you can be honest and transparent and vulnerable. How has going through the Conquer journey helped you to notice yourself and to notice how you're reacting differently? She says, it has been comforting. It's helping me do the right thing. And one more thing, I am more confident. I am more confident. We haven't even gotten to this module yet. I am more confident and know what the scriptures teach. I am more confident that God loves me as much as any man. He doesn't have a love for men and a love for women. He loves me as much as he loves anyone. For years, I have felt less, and that I should do everything to make it easy for my husband. And now know there should be reciprocity. And a Christian man needs to love his wife back if there's going to be a good relationship. And knowing the truth sets you free. So I wanted to share her win with you because I just thought that would encourage you. I'm going to share one more, and then we're going to get into our confidence module. And then later on, I'm going to share you a couple more. This is Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is 50. And she's married 24 years, 3 kids, and she just decided to file for divorce. And that's a really scary thing. And many of you have just decided that. Some of you are working on staying well, and you have your own wins, and we would love to hear them in the feed. But what happened that caused her to want to join Conquer is she felt incredibly lonely. She felt scared, and she felt a lot of guilt. And she heard about Conquer and wanted to get some new information because she too had been fed a lot of the Christian information from her church that she tried but did not work. So here are 3 experiences that she has experienced, her wins. I have learned the value of speaking the truth responsibly and thereby practicing it more and more. Everything in life is different because I'm different. I've chosen to take some steps I needed to do to get healthy. It's still overwhelming at times. My husband's new job is out of state, selling our new home and division of our assets, but I'm grateful to know how I can calm myself down when I feel anxious. I know how to focus on the truth now. No more denying, no more crazy making, and I'm trusting God in a way that I haven't before. These are amazing wins, ladies. In just these 6 weeks that we've been together, these are amazing wins. Some of you have been in the church for years and years and years, and I'm not diminishing our church and the importance of church and teaching, but in this particular area of practical application of scriptural truths and relationships, they haven't done the best job. And I think they're beginning to see that even in all the racial tension and all the race relations that we're in. We haven't done the best job at trying to put into practice what God says about the way we treat people and the way we interact with people in relationships, whether it's between men and women, blacks and whites, old and young. And I think this is a moment in our country for revival, a moment for honest humility and repentance and soul searching on how we've put up little platitudes and, oh, I'm not this, or I don't do this, but we really do. And to begin to be more self-aware and begin to do that work. So I'm just so proud of you guys, and you have done such a great job. So if any of you have any wins you want to share, put it in the feed because we want to acknowledge you. Last week, Tara had a win. She had this big aha moment and she told us about it. And Leah and I both like forgot to ask her. So if you're here, Tara, share us with your big insight moment. But right now, I want to stop and ask you to put in the feed when you went through the confidence module, or if you want to go back to the strengthening module, if you had an aha moment, like, oh, you know, those moments where it just gets clear, like the blinders fall off your eyes and it gets crystal clear. And you know the next right step. And this is really important. Leah and I have been reading this book called The Next Right Thing, I think it's called. And it's a really good book. But I think we get caught up in what are all the steps? What's everything I have to do? And sometimes we don't know that, and that's okay. But if we walk faithfully in the next right step that we know to do, it's amazing how God opens up the next right step that we should take, and then the next right step. So sitting still and waiting for the whole picture to open up may not happen, but if you start your movement forward with the thing you know you need to do next, oftentimes then the rest of it begins to open up too. So any aha moments in the feed? Do you see any, Leanne? I don't have my
You know what? I just want to tag off. So in my quiet time this morning, I love our God is so powerful and his Holy Spirit just moving. And may I just share the proverb that God led me to this morning that just totally tags off of what you just shared?
Yeah.
So it's Proverbs 16. I'm going to read it on my phone here. I've got it pulled up, ready to go. Proverbs 16, 31 through 33. It says, long life is the reward of the righteous. Gray hair is a glorious crown. And then this is really powerful. It says here in verse 32, it is better to be patient than powerful. It is better to win control over yourself than over whole cities. Ladies, and I just thought, oh, that really spoke with me on this Conquer journey, that is what we are doing, is we are learning tremendous control over ourselves and our lives, and just that self-control. So anyway, God himself determines our answer, it goes on to say, but I just was so encouraged by that passage this morning. So thank you for letting me share that. It is better to be patient than powerful. It is better to win control over yourself than whole cities.
Yeah, and this is an important thing, and I'm going to be doing a Conquer video on this. So we just sent you a Conquer video on this whole reactive abuse or resistance to control. You might not have watched it yet because most of you are newbies and you're still in the Conquer journey, which is fine. You can catch up. But we see it in our culture right now. Okay, so we see reactive abuse because they're angry. They're angry at what happened to them, or they're angry at what happened to someone else, George Floyd. And if you haven't read my Facebook statement on it, I didn't put it on the Conquer page because I don't want Conquer to get, distracted with other things. But it's on my professional page, Enriching the Relationship That Matters Most. But we see this reactive abuse and an entitlement to be destructive because of what happened. And this is a mindset that must shift in you if you want to be healthy. We see the destruction now. And what happens is you lose your cause. I think that what happened to George Floyd was awful, despicable, terrible, terrible abuse of power. The policeman had already been written up a number of times for his abuse of power and poor policing. He should have never had that job. And yet a system, an organization, a union protects bad people sometimes in schools and churches and police forces. It happens in our country. And so we protect bad pastors sometimes, right? We protected bad priests in the Catholic Church for years who were abusing children. So that system is there. But when we start getting outraged at the system, and we start getting outraged at what happened at the church or at the police or with George Floyd, whatever it is, and we start getting reactive to what happens to us in our home, and we start abusing back, the whole conversation shifts. Instead of what happened to George and look at what the policeman did, and this is bad. Now, look at these thugs, look at how they're behaving, look at what they're doing. And so the conversation shifts. And so I don't want that to happen to you. And so we have to be careful when we're handling our anger that we do learn to exercise self-control, because when we just erupt and react, of course, that's the normal thing to do. That's our humanness. All right, that's not necessarily pathological. It's human. The godly fruit of the spirit of self-control is divine. It's Holy Spirit inspired. That the very thing that I feel like doing in my flesh when I'm upset with someone is being snarky or punching them in the nose or whatever. That's what I feel like doing. To not do that requires something more than I have. And that's exactly what Leanne was talking about. The whole Proverbs talks about if a person can't rule their spirit, it's like, you know, a city on fire. And we've seen that. We've seen that in our culture right now. And that's not what we want to be a part of in our home, because your kids are like the people on TV watching what's happening. And they're going, oh my gosh, my mom is crazy. And that's what we're judging all these people as, when they might have some legitimate feelings and hurt and anger, all of that. But the way they're handling that is distracting people from their voice and their point. And so I'm going to talk all about that in the next video, but be aware, we're seeing all of that right out on our TV every night. And if you want not to have your kids see that in your home, then that's going to be up to you to learn to manage your rage at what your husband does to you, your hurt at what he does to you, in a godly way. And we'll talk about that in our next video.
So good. You know, and as I was reviewing for this, Leslie, one thing that I really appreciated when you were talking about this healthy emotional detachment, which is one of our videos, right? I think it's the second one, the emotional detachment in this module. There's something that really spoke to me in what you shared. And then I'm going to answer a question that somebody had on the feed specifically for me. It said on, I've got your notes. Gosh, ladies, if you don't know, you can print out some of these transcripts and they're great, right? So I have it in front of me and I've got my own little notes written on the side here. And this is what it said. You said, Leslie, that detaching also does not mean becoming cruel, indifferent, or uncaring toward your spouse, just like what you talked about. Mm-hmm. And one question that I really asked myself based on what you said was, do I need my anger and my bitterness in order to guard my heart and maintain a boundary? Do I need my anger and my bitterness? And I really reflected on that question even last night as I was preparing for today. And it's like, wow, sometimes I do. It's been a little challenging around here for the last couple of weeks. And even this morning, it's God is showing me the areas in my life that I still want to grow in confidence in, and to be able to stand and guard my heart. That is my job. And that is my work, is to do that. And my other question was, how can I do good to Dwayne, and how can I care for him all the while staying in core and applying everything that I am working? So whether you're staying well or leaving well, you can still do good in the kingdom to your spouse or your ex-husband. You can still do good and care for them, their heart space, while staying in core. So I think
that's such an important piece. That's such an important piece, Leanne, because I think in my work with women, especially in counseling them and working with women, they are so afraid of their anger, and they're so afraid of being, considered witchy or mean or unkind, that they don't have boundaries. They don't use their no. They're not assertive on what they want, what they don't want. And we're talking a lot about this in the people pleasing moving beyond class, that we're going to do next on another Facebook page. But we're so afraid of that as women, much more so than men, but we're so afraid of being unliked, rejected, seen as selfish, all those kind of things, that we bend over backwards a lot of times accommodating, until we're so full of anger and resentment and bitterness. Then we can tell ourselves we're allowed to have a boundary. And it's usually out of anger and spite that we build that boundary, right? And then when we get over that, then we lose our boundary. And so then it's like, then they think everything's better. They don't have to think everything's better, as long as you speak up and tell them it's not better. You just don't want to be angry and resentful anymore, right? So as long as you use your voice, they don't think it's better, as long as you are clear that it's not better. But that doesn't mean you have to be mean and cruel to show someone you're unhappy with them. You can tell someone you're unhappy with the situation the way it is, and that you won't have a conversation that way, or you won't be able to be married that way. And you can speak the truth in love, and you don't need that bitter edge if you know how to do it another way. And that's what we're trying to teach you.
No, that's so good. And I have to just really confess that when I was first doing this work, when I first joined Conquer, actually, when I first found Leslie many, many years ago, and I was starting to try and set boundaries, which I was really weak at, I felt like I was kind of like this. On doing that whole thing, I was just very weak, but anger was a motivation for me. And a lot of the stuff that spewed out of me was just not very loving. And it was really fun because of my accountability here, doing this with each one of you. My husband made a choice. He boogied out this morning to go someplace that I don't agree with, but he's doing it anyway. And I just had to let it go. And I wasn't letting anger be my motivator for setting my own boundary of not joining him, not asking him to wait for me, that kind of thing. And so I just want to share with you, it's a process. It's a layer process. And letting go of that anger is huge. One of the questions that came in the feed, Leslie, specifically for me was, you mentioned some of your marriage challenges, Leanne. I'm wondering if your husband is supportive of your Conquer work. And if not, how do you handle his disapproval? He's supportive of my work, the fact that I work. He loves that I coach women. He loves that I inspire women. He loves that I get a paycheck.
You're making money, right?
I'm making money. He loves that part. It makes him uncomfortable that I am stronger. And he doesn't quite know what to do when I'm not like blowing a gasket all the time, because there was a time where I would try so hard, ladies, to get him to understand what I was trying to say. I was jading all over the place. I was not holding any boundary in that. We were driving in the car one time and I was trying to get him to understand me. He didn't understand me. And I banged on the, fortunately I was the passenger, didn't bang on the steering wheel, but I just reached out and I'm like, stop, you're not getting me. And those days are over for me. I hope and pray by the power of the Spirit, I have enough self-control not to do that. But that's the reaction he got used to. And now when I just, wished him well, gave him a peck on the cheek and said, talk to you later. That's a very different Leanne. And so when he does disapprove, I heard in the last 3 weeks that I am disobedient. I have heard in the last 3 weeks that you better start practice what you're coaching people, because I'm holding a boundary. I have heard some very interesting things in my household. So I would say that is going on still. So I wouldn't say that he's necessarily all like flowery about the work that I am doing. But me handling his disapproval, I don't take it personally anymore. I know that what he's saying is about him. It is not about the work that I'm doing.
And that's the detachment. You're detaching from your need to have him approve of your growth, right? You're not detaching from him as a person, like, I don't care about you. You're detaching from your clinging to his approval or him doing his work for you to be okay. All those unhealthy dependencies that we develop as women and develop in relationships, you're detaching from those consciously.
Yeah, it's a very conscious choice. I love that you brought up that word. It is a conscious choice, and it's a moment by moment choice sometimes. I found myself, in the last couple of weeks, almost trying to dive back in the box. And, I even brought up to my husband that we need to have a really kind of a heart-to-heart conversation. And we had a little date set to do that this week. And he invited one of his buddies over right when we were supposed to do it. So what does that tell me? He's not doing his own work. He's a little bit afraid of what I might say. But I didn't get all wigged out about it. It gave me great information. And I reframed it like Leslie's been teaching us. I reframed it in, great, this is giving me more opportunity to prepare. That means I need to prepare more for our conversation and apply more self-control, more tools. And those of you know some of my cheat sheets, I have a script oftentimes when I'm going to talk to him. It just shows me I have to do that. And I use that as great information for me. So that's how I handle some of the disapproval and him just not even getting in my boat and rowing with me. I have my work to do. That's all my work to do, irregardless of if he does his or not.
Right. And I think this is where we really want to make it clear to you. And we've said this many, many times, but your job in Conquer is to get healthy, not to save your marriage. And if you can let go of the outcome of that, you can stay focused on getting healthy. Your job in Conquer is to follow God and get healthy. Your job in Conquer is to follow God, get healthy, and mature into the person he's called you to be. That's your job. I hope your husband likes that person. Probably he won't, at least not at first, because he's used to the other person. And let me just give you a quick illustration. When your kids were maturing, it's their job to mature and get healthy, right? It's their job as kids to mature and get healthy. Your job as a mom is to help them, but it's their job to mature and get healthy. You didn't always like what you were seeing, especially as they started to be more assertive, especially as they started to pull away, especially as they started to have their own mind and want their own choices, because it's easier to parent a kid that you can control, like at 3, at least to some degree, than it is to parent a 15-year-old who can walk out the house and you're not about to jump on their back and stop them, right? So it's easier so when your husband's used to controlling you as a 3-year-old, and now you're starting to get healthy and mature, understand it's going to create a little uncertainty for him. Like, who are you? And how do I get back to controlling you? And if you can handle that maturity with truth and grace, just like your children could with you, but they're still immature, okay? And they may say, leave me alone, Mom, I'm making my own mind. So you might not say it that way, and maybe you might say it that way. But at some point, your kids say to you, Mom, I'm a grown-up now. I don't need your help here. Mom, I'm an adult now. I don't want you to tell me what to do. Mom, it's my business. Get out of it. I have boundaries. No, I don't want you stopping over at my house without knocking. You know, all of those things, you've heard that if you're around our ages, right? And so your kids are learning to be healthy and mature. And as you accept that and work with that, you create better relationships with them. If you resist and fight that, and you demand that your kids bow to your authority and bow to your control, even as grown-ups, you're not going to have a good relationship with them. Same goes for marriage, right? So as you're getting healthier, you're beginning to say in good ways, hey, my job before the Lord is to be a healthy woman. I hope we can make this relationship work. I still love you. If you can say that honestly, I still love you. And I'm sure Leanne says I still love you. And I hope you do your work too. I'd love for us to be partners through this journey. But I'm still responsible for me to grow and do my work, right? And so that's your job. And as you do your job and feel confident, that's what God calls you to do. We have found that that's the only route. That is the only route to save your marriage in a good way. Now you can stay married, all right? And some of you are choosing to do that. You're staying well and you're growing to be healthy. It's not going to save your marriage as a relationship. You may still live in your marriage, but it may not. And Leanne doesn't know that at this point. I mean, they're working sometimes and they're not working sometimes, right? But she's willing to keep doing her work and see what happens there. And I think that's what this detachment and confidence means is I know God is in this. And I don't need to live mean or hateful or discouraged because I'm not having a great marriage. There's something in it for me right now to learn, to grow and be healthy. And I'm good with that because Jesus is here with me. And if I'm not staying well and I'm leaving, there's something in there for Jesus to help you to learn to be healthy too. So don't feel like you're taking plan B. Both plans mature and get healthy. It is God's will that you mature and live a holy life. God will cause all things to work together for your good to those who love God. And last week in the Strengthening Journal, there was a whole circle thing on God's will. I hope you watched it, but that can be very helpful for you when you start getting shaky about what God's will is. So anybody have any wins they want to share first? We want to get to your questions, but anybody have any wins that they want to share as they watch this module or aha moments? Do you see anything that they're sharing, Martha, that you can share with me? I mean, Martha or Leanne?
I can take a peek too. One thing as we're waiting for that, um, I just want to read something else that, right, just from your words, Leslie. And it says, detaching helps you let go of your obsession with saving your marriage or your spouse. Instead of spinning our wheels, trying to convince them, convict them, control them, or correct them, we let go and we get on with our own lives and our own healing. We can still love. We can still have empathy and compassion on their losses without liking or enabling their behaviors. Mic drop, mic drop moment. You know, I said that something earlier that you said too, but it's like, remember, ladies, this is what it's about. We don't have to like everything that they're doing. We don't have to enable everything that they're doing. We don't have to get them to get it. They may not, but we get to, just like I shared earlier, we need to be responsible. We have the opportunity to be responsible for ourselves. And, you know, his indifference is not your responsibility. And the other
It might result in some of your loneliness for sure, but it's not your responsibility. And then it's your responsibility to deal with your loneliness and how you're going to deal with that loneliness or how you're going to deal with that conflict, right? It might result in some conflict. Then it's your responsibility to learn how to deal with that conflict by not jading, by not reacting destructive ways. And those are all good things for you to learn because that's part of being healthy, right?
Yeah, and part of this human experience. We get
just
to
like raising children. How many of you had to learn not to react to your kids? I did. You know, there were, you know, my mother would react to me, and the quickest way that she would react is just backhand me across the face. And I never wanted to do that to my kids, but I felt it sometimes. I felt myself reacting, and I could feel myself wanting to just go wonk. And thank God I didn't. But that required a conscious awareness of what I wanted to do, and my big circle saying, but that's not going to feel mature or healthy. That's not who I want to be. And that's where you catch yourself from reacting in negative ways. That doesn't mean I didn't have to put boundaries down and say, I'm not having a conversation with you when you talk to me that way. Right? Instead of slapping him in reaction, then I'm going to be the bad guy. When I say, I'm not talking to you when you talk to me this way, I'm not having a conversation with you. Now I don't have to be the bad guy. I just am taking care of me. I'm protecting my boundaries. I'm not letting myself be berated and talked to in a negative way like that. And I'm keeping my side of the street clean. All I'm saying is no more conversation for me.
That's right. You know, Lynn kept her side of the street clean, Leslie. Lynn, we celebrate with you. She says, last night when my husband was escalating his anger and started to swear at me, I calmly told him to stop swearing at me. I remained calm. Yay for me, she said. Yay for you, Lynn. Yay for you, Lynn.
Yeah, and I think that's really good. Step one, tell your husband, hey, stop swearing at me. I don't like it. Step two, I'm not staying in this room while you're swearing at me, right? So if someone is doing something, it is totally fine, whether it's a child or an adult, to say stop it. But you don't have the control over a child that you, over a husband, or shouldn't, that you would have as a kid with punishment, those kind of things. But even with a kid who's throwing a fit at 16, you might say, go throw one. I'm going to my bedroom, putting my headphones on. I'm not listening to this, right? And
let me know when you're done. Let me know when you're done. And so, you know, Janie also had a win. Leslie, Janie says, my win. Each next right step has been working, and it feels like I am being guided by the Holy Spirit. My son and I are thriving in the domestic violence shelter. I have possession of my house, although I do not feel comfortable going back there yet. This makes me cry. I feel like a Conquer poster child. Thank you for all the support. Congratulations, Janie. Ladies, this is why we get up early. This is why we show up. This rocks my world. Thank you for sharing your wins. Thank you.
It's so important that you do share your wins with one another, because sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And when we hear those, it's encouraging for everyone. It's encouraging for everyone. And I just want to so encourage you, ladies, that doing the next right thing. And again, I'll share personally with you. So I got called out by one of you Conquer sisters in a right way. So just like I call you out sometimes you call me out. So one of you, and I'm not going to name the name, but she called me out because she said, hey, Leslie, you're a spokesperson and you haven't said anything about this racial thing. You need to speak up. Just like I'm telling you guys, you need to speak. And I was a little afraid. I was a little afraid of a couple things. I was afraid of backlash from Christian community. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing because who am I? I'm a white person. How do I understand? Although I do have an Asian daughter and I have 3 half African American Asian granddaughters. My daughter married an African American. So I have a little taste of what prejudice and discrimination feels like, even when she was little, right? Like, why'd you adopt a Korean kid? Just stupid comments. But one of my Conquer sisters called me out. Leslie, use your voice. So I worked all weekend on something to say about this. And it was very stressful because all I could do was I must have walked 25 miles around my block talking to the Lord about that, because I get my ideas when I'm walking, and I would come home and write a few down and then go back for another walk, come back. All I was doing was the next right thing. God, what do you want me to say? How do you want me to say it? I can't make it too long. I'm not writing a book about this. I don't know enough to write a book about this. What do I say? But all I do was the next right thing. Right. And that you're right. Holy Spirit directs you when you are obedient and you do the next right thing. And don't worry about the outcome. Like, I couldn't worry about whether people were going to be mad at it, people were going to be glad at it. I couldn't think about that part. All I could think about was my part. This is in obedience. I need to speak out about this issue. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do with your relationship with your church, with your husband, with your children. All you can do is your part. You can't be in control of all the results. But as you take those steps forward in obedience, especially as we're calling you out a little, hey, don't be a victim. Don't let yourself continue to be a victim. Have owner mindset. Then you can begin to get that healthy confidence that, oh my gosh, God gave me words to say. And I know that's what he wanted me to say. Whether someone else likes it or not, I can't control. But I knew what I wrote was what God wanted me to say.
And you said it beautifully. You said it beautifully. Thank you for doing that. And it takes a lot of courage.
And thank you to my Conquer sister for calling me out on that. And I just think that's the blessing of community. That's the blessing of community. My kids also called me out on it, but you called me out first. You called me out first. And so if you're listening, I appreciate you.
It's so good. And, I think and you took it, you could have taken that a completely different route. And, you really, I just admire you, and I admire what you shared. So thank you. And what a beautiful example of this. And, Sarah talks about, she shared another one of her wins. So she said here, not directly related, but I realized this week that I've been praying for a Saul Paul moment for my husband. But I feel like God showed me that Saul was trying to honor God, even though he was doing it very wrong. But when he showed up to Saul on the road, he told him to change his method, but that Saul already wanted to do right. God didn't change his basic desire, just his method. God isn't going to force my husband to want to do right.
Great insight, because so many people see that Saul Paul occurrence as this God's changed his heart. God didn't change his heart. Paul's heart was always about serving God. Paul's heart was always about doing the right thing. He was just misguided. And so when he got that new information from Jesus downloaded to him, he did change the way.
Yeah. Beautiful wins. I love sharing your wins. And I, for whatever reason, my feed's not refreshing. So I'm not.
All right, well, let me get to a couple of questions. You see the first one there. How do you reply to a counselor who acts like I'm not being confident if I ask for his help for steps to move forward when you really are unsure? One specific area was trying to work out a co-parenting schedule with my husband, who will not work with me simply to be punitive. I understand the need to move forward in faith at times, even if you don't feel confident. However, when I'm asking a question, it's because I'm genuinely needing guidance and feedback. So my question to you is then, how did you handle that? Because this is true for all of you. You're going to get a little kickback from people. You're going to get a little resistance from people because they think you need something different than you think you need, right? So they think you need to think for yourself and you think you need help, right? I mean, don't our kids do that? Mom, I need you to help me with my homework. And you're saying, I think you can do it yourself, right? So maybe your counselor is more confident in your confidence than you are, maybe. But I think the real question is, how do you handle that? What do you do with that? Just like when this woman contacted me and said, hey, Leslie, you're not speaking up. How do you handle that? Do you listen? Do you take it into account that maybe there might be some accurate information there? Maybe I'm stronger than I think I am, and he doesn't want you to be too dependent on him. Right? So I don't have an answer for you, but I think that's a legitimate process to go through when someone doesn't give you what you want. Now, in coaching, there are times that people will say that to Leanne and I too, when we're working with you or other coaching clients individually. I hired you to tell me what to do. I don't have to think about it, right? And I get that. I get that. But on the other hand, if you don't learn to think about it and you don't learn how to think about things, you're still going to always be dependent on someone, right? Whether it's a counselor, a coach, your husband. And so part of getting healthy is to learn how to think about solving a problem that you don't know what to do. It includes getting advice, but how to think about that.
Well, and giving yourself, for many of us in this, in a destructive relationship, we've been told how to think. We haven't even given ourselves breath. I was talking earlier.
Not only how to think, we've been told what to think.
We have never built our lives. And so for some of us, it's not a rebuilding of our life, it's building our life from new. And I think when we can honor that and just say, you know what, I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's okay, because now I'm learning. And, Florine spoke another win that goes right along with that, Leslie. She says, boundaries to let go of an abusive, toxic relationship, to let in the healthy and God honoring relationship into my future days. Another beautiful win. This is where we get to make choices. We forget that we're of choice. And sometimes one of the most beautiful things, and I'm really glad my husband's going to be gone overnight. I'm really glad that I'm going to get, ladies, it's the first time in 4 months I've had the house to myself. Can I just get a hallelujah? I am so excited. But this is my opportunity, right? To breathe, to allow my soul to breathe and to prepare for the conversation I know I need to have with him when he returns. And so allowing that God honoring place to come in is huge. Another gal, Megan, shared that her spirit has just settled over the past 6 weeks working on her. She's saying, Leslie, it doesn't matter what's going on around her. And even going back to this question, needing guidance, go to the Holy Spirit, right? Before your appointments, just like Megan is. She says, it doesn't matter what's going on around me. I know that I have control of me and my behavior, and that is so powerful. It feels so good to be making steps in the right direction, regardless of what my husband is doing or where he's going.
And that's confidence. That's what we're talking about in this module. But let's go back to this question about co-parenting. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to invite your Conquer sisters to chime in, because they may have walked this ahead of you, and they may want to give you some suggestions about co-parenting. Like, and here's I think where we get stuck. You cannot develop a cooperative co-parenting schedule with someone who doesn't want to cooperate and doesn't want to compromise. There is absolutely no way. So don't put that on yourself. All right. So I think my suggestion would be to survey your Conquer sisters, evaluate what they're saying, see what they've tried, think for yourself, talk to your counselor about it. These are all step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Make a proposal to your husband. He's going to shoot it down and then say, well, then you make a counter proposal. You're not going to work together on this. You're just not. Because if you could work together, you wouldn't have had to create a co-parenting schedule, right? You wouldn't be getting divorced. So the fact that you can't work together on it is indicative of why you got divorced. So don't have that unrealistic expectation that somehow I've got to figure out how to do this when you couldn't figure out how to do it in your marriage. You still may have to do it, but it may not be done cooperatively.
Yeah, and I think I love that. And I think one thing that I would tag on to that is making sure you know what you want. Don't just default into what's expected or letting somebody else make that decision for you, but really search your heart and be very prayerful about what is it that you really want? How do you want this co-parenting experience to look? You know, think about 1 year from now. What do you want to be saying when we're doing another live and we're talking about your wins? What do you want to be telling us 1 year from now about your co-parenting experience and how you walked through this? So maybe give that a second of thought, or 10 minutes of thought, so you're able to communicate that clearly, because nobody else, dear sister, is going to know what you want if you don't know what you want and are able to communicate that to them in a very clear and confident way. So that's just one thought too. And then do you have something, Leslie?
Yeah, and one other thing. Yeah, just strategically. So going back to strategic planning for dealing with a narcissist, if he's indeed a narcissist, you never want to tell a narcissist directly what you want, because then that gives them power over you to hurt you. All right. So understand that it's important for you to know what you want. So if it's really, 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 really important for you to have Christmas Day, probably don't say that, because if you say that, he's going to fight you tooth and nail so that you don't have Christmas Day. So I think strategically, you need to know what you want and what's really, really important to you. But you also need to know how to communicate that so that it doesn't give him the upper hand to use your children and what you want to hurt you continuously, even after divorce. So there's some strategy to that, and you may need some extra advice or help, but the less that you can, so you can say, hey, why don't you put, you know, I'd love, so here's a way of strategically, if he is narcissistic, saying, you know, I know the kids are really important to you and I want to be as generous as I can with you. What's really important to you? Okay. Now, you know what's important to you, but by doing that, it soothes a narcissist that he is important and that his feelings are important. He's not going to care about your feelings. The fact that you're demonstrating some consideration of his may create more goodwill in his spirit than if you say, this is what I want, right? Because he doesn't care what you want. You're an object to him, right? You're just there to meet what he wants. So just, we're not talking about enabling, but we're talking about being strategic.
So good. And that requires a conscious choice and some pre-planning.
Right.
I love that, Leslie.
Right.
So good. So good. So I hope that answers your question. That was a beautiful interaction there. So Tara,
Right, so there's one other question. I just see two questions here, but you said in your book something about are we good? Are we kind of wonky on our sound?
I think you're locked up right
now. Give us some feedback, because I'm not hearing Leanne at all. So I'm going to move forward. Leanne looks frozen. So somebody asked, you said in your book something about husbands who destroy things. Martha, give me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Leslie or me who's locked up live, so I can't hear Leslie either. So let's see if Martha gives us some feedback. I'm going to speak about Tara's win right now. Looks like Martha's doing some work on Leslie's end. So Tara, I just want to celebrate with you. Tara shared, if you don't have your feed in front of you, she said, aha, what is mine? Strength video 7. My body, my time, my energy, my mood, my health is all mine. My husband is still requiring me to give than to him to manage. Oh, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. And I'm learning to say, no, this is mine, and I am spending it this way. So congratulations, Terry, you're taking ownership and responsibility, and you're able to communicate that. So we do celebrate that win with you. Strength video 7 is what Tara gave her win for. So God is so awesome. And you ladies are so awesome to encourage each one of us. Dana says that she was realizing that she was trying too hard in our marriage. And now she's focusing on the Lord and setting healthy boundaries. Congratulations, Dana. That's beautiful. So, hey, Leslie, you're back, but you're muted, my dear. Can't hear you.
My internet.
There you go.
All right, are we better? Okay.
Yep, I can hear you now and see you.
Yes, I don't know what happened. I was not hearing you, and so I was not sure what was going on. So anyway, I just want to answer one more question, and I want to really highlight this whole module on uncertainty and letting go of the outcome, because I think this is where a lot of you get really anxious. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. My children's lives are going to be ruined. I feel so uncertain about making these decisions. And so this uncertainty and letting go of the outcome, I really want to highlight in this module so that you can have confidence. Of course, we don't know the future. God doesn't give us a crystal ball to tell us what will happen if we stay, if we go. That's why it's important for you to not focus on that. What you focus on is healthy, strong, next right step, right? Next right step, next right step. And you don't know exactly what the outcome will be on anything, whether you find a lump on your breast or whether you go to the grocery store. So you go to the grocery store, you get in your car, put your seatbelt on, that's the next right thing. You get in your car and you drive responsibly. That's the next right thing. You have no control over the next phases of what's going to happen, whether you get to the grocery store alive or not. A lot of that is uncertainty. We don't think about it that way because we just assume. But accidents happen, things happen. But if you do the next right thing and make sure that you're safe and your kids are safe and you're driving safe, it's more likely that you're going to have the outcome that you want, but not certain. And if we have to be guaranteed certainty, we're going to be upset when life throws us curveballs. Because I remember, I mean, this was a very early case I had in counseling, but it was a Christian girl. She'd gone to Bob Jones University. She married a student there. He was going to be an aviator, missionary pilot. She stayed a virgin until she got married. They prayed together. You know, they did the purity thing, their parents courting, and all of what you were supposed to do back then to get the right husband, right? So she's in my counseling office because her husband had just been arrested for raping 25 women in the neighborhood, and he was guilty. And she's going, like, I punched all the right stamps, and this is what happens to my life. Uncertainty. She did it all right, and she was angry at God. Like, you're not supposed to allow bad things to happen to me if I do it all right, right? And so we get upset. And so we have to begin to shift that mindset that life is full of curveballs and uncertainty. In this world, what? You will have tribulation. Just because you do what God calls you to do doesn't mean you're going to end up where you think you're going to end up. And we talk about that in the video. So be sure. Elijah got very discouraged because he thought the outcome should be a certain way, and it didn't turn out that way. And I don't want you to get discouraged and conquer because you're telling yourself a lie that if I do all these modules and I get healthy and strong, God will save my marriage. He may not, because it may not be best for you and your children. Actually, it may be best for you and your children to go, because there'll be more damage to them if you stay. And I think this is where the trusting God with the outcome, you do your work, you get healthy and strong, you take your steps, and you see what God's doing. And that's where you need to focus on. So let's just read one more question here that I think we're here. I said something in my book about husbands who destroy things. What about throwing things that are unbreakable? Sandwiches, papers, cups of tea, slamming kitchen doors. What is the point of what you were saying that he throws things or chooses to break things? So in the book, the illustration was this, that she was minimizing what he was doing because she was saying, you know, he just throws things. He doesn't really hurt us. And so what I asked her was, what kinds of things does he throw? And he threw the kids' toys, he threw her things, he threw household things. And she was in her mind thinking he couldn't control himself, that he was so frustrated. But my point to her was, well, isn't it interesting that he never throws his things? He never throws his computer to the floor. He never throws his tea at himself. He never throws his book across the room, and he throws everybody else's stuff. He kicks the kids' toys, doesn't kick his car, right? So he has some control. And when someone does that, they're using scary power to say something without using their words, just like we use a bitter face. You know, I have a boundary here. Instead of just saying, hey, I can't talk to you this way. We're using nonverbal behavior to say something. And so you have two choices. One is, I can't hear you when you talk to me that way. So when you're banging things around and throwing things, that's not okay for me. Use your words, which is what we would say to a 2-year-old, right? Sadly, when a 35-year-old doesn't know how to use their words to express themselves, they're not healthy, right? They've not been taught maybe to use their words. And so use your words. You don't have to throw things to communicate you're angry. Use your words. What are you angry about? But if he's not using his words and he's scaring people, then that's an issue. Whether he's physically hurting you, he's controlling you through fear, right? So if you say something I don't like and I throw a cup of tea at the wall, that teaches you not to say something he's not going to like, right? Even though the tea didn't hit you, it's at the wall, right? So I think it's important when someone uses scary methods to control you, even stuff like that, right? Shut up. Oh, what does that mean? Like you're going to cut my throat if I don't? That's a scary gesture. And I think it's worth your time to say that's not okay.
So good.
Any thoughts, Leanne?
No, I think that's just brilliant what you shared. And I just want to, for those, there's some gals are saying in the feed that they're behind on their modules, they're feeling a little discouraged. I'm going to just say you're right where you need to be. Just be where you are and just take the next right step and continue on. Boy,
we're going to do one more Facebook Live next week, kind of a catch up. So if you are behind, okay, pick a couple and maybe go through, just don't go through everyone. Just pick a couple that you think is important, that you really want to get your teeth into, and focus on that one. And then come back next week and we can wrap things up and answer your questions on that.
Right. And I just want to, for those of you who haven't stepped into the confidence module yet, I just want to tell you what the names of the videos are right now, just to wet your whistle, because it's a lot of what we're talking about today. And so conquering loneliness. There was a gal in the feed, Leslie, that spoke during prayer yesterday as we were praying together that she was really lonely. She was feeling very alone, that she didn't have a lot of friends. And so that would be a great video for you to watch about conquering loneliness. And ladies, I just want to encourage you that who can you count on? Right? Who can you count on? That's something that you can do to conquer that loneliness. Who can you reach out to? So that's a great video. Emotional detachment, just what we've been talking about here today. And talking about some of the indifference and not having brick walls around your hearts. Conquering your bog, your big, hairy, audacious goal is another video in this module. That to grow, we all need some goals. We need some movement forward. And we're here to help support you in that. Conquering.
And I think, and going back to big, hairy, audacious goals, it's really, I give 5 steps of how to do that. But I think this Conquer site can be a great place for you to conquer a big, hairy, audacious goal, whether it's to get a divorce, or whether it's to stay well, or whether it's to lose weight, or whether it's to save money, or whatever this big, hairy, audacious goal is for you, get a job. Because once you say it out loud to the group, that's one of the steps to commit and decide, and then speak it, announce it. You're accountable. You're accountable. You're saying, hey, I'm gonna go back to school, or I'm gonna apply for this, or I'm gonna work on my taxes this week because July 15th is coming up and I haven't done that yet. That's my big, hairy, audacious goal. And as you commit to that and you let people know, so I took the next step and the next step. And if you are in the people class, we talked about this overwhelming kind of feeling. When you take those steps and you announce them, I know when I wrote my first book, I would have never written my first book without this strategy, because I announced it to my Sunday school class. I think God's calling me to write a book and I'm terrified. Can I teach this over the next 10 weeks? That forced me, not announcing it and deciding, forced me to think about what I wanted to say in the class each 10 weeks. And that helped me write some of the book. So by forcing myself to say it out loud and being accountable to teaching this class every week, it got done.
I love that. And think about it, ladies. What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? We are a third of the way through June. We are half of the way through the year. What big, hairy, audacious goal do you have left for 2020? Just because of COVID, just because of all of the stuff that's going on, doesn't mean you don't have to, or you don't have the opportunity to set a big, hairy, audacious goal. Think about who's going to support you. Who have you told about it? Tell us. Tell us on the Conquer feed. We would love to encourage you and to share that experience
So
with
So my big, hairy, audacious goal for this year was to have a Conquer conference in October, and probably not going to have it because it's still uncertain as far as what people are going to travel. Do you want to be together? So we're doing it virtually. We're working on this even now. So I'm announcing this, but I have no idea how to host a virtual conference. Like, we're doing these little Facebook Lives, but we're not going to do it this way. So how are we going to do this? We have probably 1,000 people who are going to come to this virtual conference from all over the world. I'm not sure how to do this, but I'm announcing it to you. We are going to do it. And we're going to I'm going to change the times now. So just so you know, we're going to do it Friday and Saturday. We're going to start at 11 o'clock Eastern time, Friday morning, because we figured you're traveling that day if you're coming to the conference anyway. So we're going to make it bigger. We're going to make it longer for you. And we're going to do it Friday night on Wednesday, and a Friday day on October, I think it's 23rd. We'll start 11 Eastern time. So that means, I don't know if we're going to be on Central Standard, on 3 hour difference between that by then, but it's early for us here. And we're going to go till about 7 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. And then we're going to do the same thing, 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. And we're going to go till about 6 o'clock Eastern time. So we are going to have a lot of content, a lot of fun. We're going to do some amazing things, but I have no idea how we're going to do it. I'm just taking the next step, the next step, the next step, the next step. So pray for us, because this is going to be a fun, amazing conference. But this is my big, hairy, audacious goal for you guys this year, is I want us to connect in a way, even if we can't do it in person this year, we're going to do it virtually, and we're going to do it meaningfully, and it's going to be fun. But I have no idea how. So there we go. It's out there.
Yay, I love that. And I am so excited for the conference. And I'm sure each one of you ladies that are listening right now, you're excited too. You hear it in Leslie's voice. You see it in our faces. We are really excited to be able to do this. So I can't wait to see what unfolds for you, Leslie, and know that we are praying as your team. We're praying for the Lord to just guide and direct you. And he's going to give you everything that you need. Everything that you need and more. It's going to overflow. I believe
it's going to be a cool conference. I've been to a couple virtual ones just to kind of watch and lurk. I'm a lurker, and I see some neat ideas that we are going to implement. So it's going to be fun.
Excellent. Well, so Melissa posted on the feed. She shared a bog, but she's already living the bog. So I just want to share. She said, my win since joining Conquer is that I have gone back to school to get my master's degree in counseling, something I set aside to meet the needs of others. Classes started last week. Congratulations, Melissa. I love that. I love that.
It's interesting how many women, like even Leanne, when Leanne was going through her crisis and her stuff with her husband, she went back to school because she said, you know what? This isn't just for me to learn. This is for me to teach others to learn. And so God may call some of you into, Kelly Yazzie, our Conquer mentor person, was in Conquer for years, and she went back to school, and she's now working with our Conquer mentors. And so, yeah, it's just an amazing thing how God just doesn't waste your suffering at all, and will use it in the lives of you and your children, but he may expand your territory.
Yeah, I love that. And it's okay. We have a video in here at Conquering Uncertainty. You may not know what your big, hairy, audacious goal is. That's okay. That's okay. I often say, Leslie, that the only constant is change. We're constantly in a state of transition.
Right.
But I also want to share with our girlfriends here in Conquer. Change is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You do not need to suffer through your change. And we are here to support you in Conquer. So that doesn't have to happen. That doesn't need to be your default. You don't need to suffer.
Well, and we talk a lot about suffering in our 6-month coaching group and Power to Change, but let me just say a little bit here. When you hear suffering is optional, I'm hearing Conquer sisters in the background saying, no, it's not. I am suffering, and I'm not choosing to suffering. I'm just suffering. But let's put it in a different way. So go through the module in uncertainty, because we do talk about that, and the letting go of the outcome. Those 2 videos in this module will help you with this piece a little bit. But you may be in pain, okay? You may be in pain about something. You're getting divorced, whatever. And we don't minimize that. Jesus says, in this world, you will have pain. You will have trouble, all right? But he also says, be of good cheer. So don't suffer too much. Like how can you be in pain and not suffer with discouragement, despair, depression, that kind of suffering, okay? And it really depends on how you frame the pain. right? So that's when we talk about reframing. We did this, and those of you who are new, don't even worry about it. It's a Conquer video in your library about ways to reframe what's happening to you. So if it's poor me, I can't believe this is happening to me, then of course you're going to suffer more than if you said, wow, I wonder what God's up to in this new season of life. I wouldn't have picked it, but he's up to something. I'm curious. There's a very different mindset. So when you frame a picture with, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why is this happening to me? This shouldn't be happening to me. And we're resisting what's happening to that. We suffer more than if we went into the event with, this isn't where I would have picked myself to be on vacation, but here's where I am. I wonder what I have to learn here. Very different perspective, right? So our mindset and how we trust God with that affects the level of suffering we'll have.
So good. Yeah. And, you know, and part of what will help you to navigate that is getting rid of the should, you know, quit shoulding on yourself. Because we can do that over and over again. And yeah, I don't want to minimize when I said that suffering is optional. I don't want to minimize anybody's suffering. So just that clarification, but it is the way that we frame it and how we choose to view it in our moving forward. We don't have to let it derail us or hijack us. Where this is the other thing that really came up for me as I was reviewing, Leslie, is we don't need to wait to start living our life for when everything's better in my marriage or when I've had it all figured out. You can start living your lives, ladies, right now, today.
It was interesting. So I had I can't even remember what it was. Something was going on with one of my kids that was really scary and hard. And you know, you start worrying about that. And I remember, and I hardly ever take a bath, but sometimes I like it. I have a big soaking tub. So I was sitting in my bathtub and I had the bubbles like up to here. And I was just sitting in my bathtub and, you know, smelling the beautiful bubbles of the lavender, relaxing. So I was trying to relax and I had some music playing. And I thought, this moment is amazing. But I would have not experienced that moment had I not learned how to say, I can't fix that. But this, my life right now, my life is amazing. I'm in this moment right in this moment. Their life is having problems and I can pray for their life. I can't fix their life. But this moment in my life, I'm not suffering. The only way I'm suffering is if I'm trying to get into their moment and fix their suffering. And I couldn't do that. And it was just really very clear to me in that moment that sometimes we have to live moment by moment, that Jesus says, you know, don't worry about tomorrow because today has enough troubles of its own, but sometimes today doesn't have any troubles at all. It's a beautiful day, but we're wrecking today because we're worried about tomorrow. We're worried about the next day and the next day. And so we're missing those moments of living in today and living in joy or beauty or peace even because we're fearing what might happen tomorrow. And I think that's something that we need to practice thinking about.
Yeah, so good. And, you know, that's all part of that letting go of the outcome. And there's a video on that in this module as well that is so incredibly powerful. You know, ladies, I know for me, this analogy was given to me back in the day when I was, you know, 10 years ago when I was wrestling with God on all of these issues, is that I was hanging on so tightly to my marriage, to the ideal of having the perfect husband and the perfect relationship and all these ideals that my fists were so tight that there was no room for anything else to come in. I was holding on to that ideal so tight-fistedly. And when I started learning that it was very important to start yielding the outcome to God, opening up my hands, and now I call it being palms up. Instead of this tight fist, I'm holding on so tight, nothing can come in. God can't even, it's hard to pry your fingers open when you're hanging on so tight to an ideal or to a dream that will never happen. And so God he slowly pried my fingers open to be ready to receive whatever he has for me. So now I'm saying, I'm coming to the throne room. I'm coming to the table with my palms up. And that's one of my big, hairy, audacious goals, is to remain open for whatever God has for me, because I want to be fat. I just said it. I want to be fat. My big, hairy, audacious goal is to be fat. ladies. That is to be faithful, available, and teachable for whatever the Lord brings into my world. So yeah, that's one of them. And I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust God to give that and to honor that request of palms up.
Yeah. So last call for questions, if any of you have any questions on this module, but I'm reminded when you talked about the fists closed, Leanne, of the captured monkey experiment. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I probably could YouTube it on and see it. But when some in Africa and other countries, when they want to capture a monkey that's, you know, either they think is causing damage or whatever, they put a jug out in the, you know, by the trees where they are, and they put all kinds of like goodies inside the jug, like a banana and stuff, but it's got a very narrow opening, right? And then the bottom is full of junk. And so they stick their hand in it and they grab all of the, you know, bananas and stuff that they want to pull out, and then they can't get their arm out, right? And so they capture the monkeys that way because they won't let go of the bananas. They won't let go of the bananas. And so if they let go of the bananas, they could pull their arm out just as they put it in. But they've got this goal. I got to have these bananas. I've got to have these treasures. And because of that, they get stuck. And it just reminded me of, like, I've got to have this perfect marriage. I've got to make him understand. I've got to have him do. And so you can't let go of the bananas to get yourself free to do your own work, because you're so caught by this my idea of my life won't work if I don't get these bananas. But now you're captured. And you can't get free until you let go of that. Let go of the outcome. Pull your arm back out, do your work, and see what God does. And I think that can be a very clear picture of what we as women have kind of idealized is, I must have marriage in order for me to be okay. I must have a man who loves and values me in order for me to be okay. And I'm not diminishing that. It's wonderful. But if you don't, I didn't have a mother who loved and cared for me. It's not going to derail your life unless you let it. Unless you let it. God will provide other people who will love and care about you. And it may not be your mother, and it may not be your husband, but it can be other people, because of course you want to be loved. Of course you want to be valued. Of course you want to be in connection and community. And that's important. You don't want to be lonely and sit in your house all by yourself. But it may not be this particular person, whether it's this husband, this mother, this sister, this girlfriend. Let go of those bananas and let God bring the right people to love you.
Oh, so powerful. Yeah, I just love that.
Yeah.
And letting go, you know, does not mean we stop caring, ladies, and that we get apathetic. That is not what letting go is. It's letting go means that we're giving the creator of the universe control over the outcome, and we're trusting him with the outcome.
And the truth is, we don't have control, even if we think we have control. It's a mindset. You think you have control over your marriage? You think you have control over your husband? You don't. So the more that you can consciously let go of that and still love him in whatever way, whether it's loving an enemy and wishing him good and saying, I don't wish you harm. I don't wish you, I wish you to be everything God wants you to be, and mean it, right? I just don't want to live with you, right? Because you don't wish that for yourself, but I do. And I'll pray for you about that, right? Pray for your enemy. So whether it's letting go that way or letting go of how it's going to be this week or this next week or this month, you don't know that. You don't know that. Leanne doesn't know how her husband's going to come home, what insights God's going to share with him, how he's going to be. She doesn't know any of that. And she can't control any of it. All she can do is her part. And that's all you can do. You can speak the truth. You can't make someone receive the truth. I have a blog going out today. I'd encourage you to head over to my blog on this woman who has a perfect marriage, at least on the outside. And she's scared to do her work because it's scary and she wants to control the outcome. And so talk to her about some things in the blog that may help you if you're in that place.
Well,
all right, any other questions? Yeah,
I
don't see any
questions. Leslie, it's 8:15. I just wanted to, I'm going to keep you on task because I want you to be refreshed before you have to jump on another live too. So we have a lot of questions here. So do you have those? Do you have a list of those?
I don't have any more questions. Martha said there aren't any more questions.
Oh, there is a bunch of questions.
Okay, Martha, what happened to the questions?
So there's here,
okay.
Oh, somebody is saying that accountability is the best thing ever for this gal. She says, I cannot run from growing, and I really love that. How can I make sure I keep the momentum going?
Well, this is really a great, I think keeping the momentum comes from a couple things. One is accountability.
Yeah.
One comes from whatever momentum you're trying to do. So for me, like I'm trying to walk 5 miles a day. That's one of my goals because I can't play pickleball and I feel like I'm sitting so much that I have to get out. So every day, that's one of my big rocks. So when you think about you're planning your time, my big rock is where's that hour and a half going, right? Because it takes me about an hour and a half to walk 5 miles. So where is that hour and a half going? Is it going like a little bit in the morning and the rest of it at night? Is it going all of it at night? Is it going, where is it going? Because if I don't think about that ahead of time, my day will get caught in all kinds of other things. So I think whatever your big rocks are, the things that are really important to you to keep the momentum going, I think it's really important, whether it's your big circle character qualities, whether it's an exercise goal, whether I need to take time to plan this virtual conference, these big rocks of what's important to me, what's the next step to keep them going. And so in the Moving Beyond People Pleasing class, which many of you are taking too, which starts in about 45 minutes, we talked about moving beyond overwhelming and doing this brain dump. And that's also in your Conquer journey thing, and not Conquer journey, but there is a video on overwhelm in there. And some of the techniques that I talk about in this place are in there. So if you're not in the Moving People Pleasing, you can still get that information. But really writing down and thinking what's important and what do I need to put in there first, because life gets sucked up, time gets sucked up with all kinds of stuff. So if you don't put your big rocks in first, and so here's the illustration I use. I don't have one here, but I used to have one in my office in Pennsylvania. I took a baby food jar. I just go get one of those little carrot jars or peas or whatever, and dump out the peas, and then put a walnut or two into the jar. So those, not the shelled ones, but the ones with the big old round shells, big rocks, big walnuts or big rocks, put the big rocks in first, and then put all rice around it. And then I'd put the lid on, I put a little bow on it, and I'd put it right in front of me. And what that illustrated was, to me, was if you took that out again and you took the big walnuts out and you put the rice in first, same amount of rice, you put the rice in first, you can't fit the walnuts in, right? But if you put the walnuts in first, all the rice fits around it. And so what it illustrated to me is if I'm letting myself use up all my valuable time without putting my big rocks in, I'm not going to have time to put my big rocks in. But if I put my big rocks in first in my day, then the rest of it kind of fits in. And so I would encourage you, if you're on a momentum, whatever that momentum is, make sure you plan. You're being accountable. And let me just say one thing about accountability too. You can't hold your husband accountable for something he's not asked you to hold him accountable for. So if you're saying, I'm holding you accountable, you shouldn't be eating that Hershey bar. I'm holding you accountable because you shouldn't be driving something. That gets really old. If they have a goal, and the only thing I think you can hold them accountable to is their wedding vows, because they did say that, I will be accountable to you. But I think what you can say is, you said when we got married, you would be faithful. You said when we got married that you would care and cherish me. That's not happening. And that's not okay for me. And see what happens. And if they say, too bad, then they've broken their vows and they don't care about that. And you can't hold someone accountable to something they don't care about, right? It's only what you care about. You care about these goals. That's why you're asking, hey, hold me accountable, because it helps me to stay focused.
So good. So Leslie, here's another big question. I'm going to go ahead, since you don't have them. Is it okay if I read it to you?
Yes.
All right. It says that I struggle with this so much. And she's speaking about being rude or disrespectful to her husband out of defensiveness or brokenness. She's asking us, how can I stay strong enough and keep my self-control muscle going?
It's really hard.
It's
really hard. Let me think about it a minute. You have any thoughts, Leanne?
Well, it is hard. This is a very, very big question. And a lot of it is spending some time knowing what it is you value, like we have talked about during these modules in the big circle, knowing what your core values are and the woman that you want to be on the other side of that conversation. So personally, for me, I don't want to be a woman who is bitter. That is not the woman that I want to be. I want to bring beauty into my space, but I also want to do it honestly. So when I think about not letting that resentment come in, I'm trying to get back to the question because my feed just refreshed. Technology can be our friend, and then it can be a derailment to our thoughts, right?
Yeah.
But here's the deal. You're only responsible for you. And at the end of the day, when you lay your head on the pillow and you're asking yourself, did the decisions I make today allow me to be the woman that God created me to be, the woman that I want to be, moment by moment? And being able to answer that question to yourself very honestly will help you to remain in core. But I think that if we don't identify the values that we hold dear, we're going to have a harder time staying in that core space. You know, a couple of years, I'm going to show you something real quick in my office. Whoops. So I did a workshop a while back, and I had the women create a frame. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I had the women create a frame. This is my one from last year. And then the part that is holding it up in the back is collaboration. So I had to identify some of the core values that I wanted to work on. And so if you can't see it and you're listening audibly, but you don't see it, it's wisdom, faith, health and well-being, and contribution. And so as I am dealing with my husband even, are the decisions and the words I'm speaking out of my mouth honoring my faith? Is it contributing, or is it taking away from the relationship that we have? Am I honoring my health and well-being? Am I making sure that I'm a good steward of me? And am I applying wisdom? And am I asking God for wisdom in my world in order to live that out? In the center of my frame is the Bible passage, I am a wise woman clothed with strength and dignity. And that is what I am framing a lot of things around. So anyway, and then the collaboration, am I collaborating with others and with God in order to see that happen?
And let me just say that there are moments when you can't do that. All right.
Yeah.
That you can't. Just like my desire is to be as attractive and put together and, you know, BO free woman as possible. All right. And if I had the flu, it probably wouldn't be happening. Right. My hair would be a mess. I would not care. I'd be, you know, in bed, and I wouldn't be doing this Facebook Live. Right. Or if, you know, so I think that, again, accepting our humanity and accepting also that we have a sin nature doesn't put this I have to do this perfectly all of the time.
Right.
It's my goal. It's what I want to be held accountable to. I'm going to hold myself accountable to this. When I fail, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to repent. But it's not something that you're going to be able to do perfectly all of the time. And there are times when it's going to be easier, like when you're had a good night's sleep and you're well fed and you're not too provoked and, you know, it's a sunny day. It might be much easier for you to do all those things. And if it's been raining for the last 3 weeks, you've been stuck in the house with 3 small kids with COVID-19 for the last 3 months, and you're ready to pull your hair out because you haven't had a haircut and you look like a mess. You know, there's other factors. And so I think we can idealize this and make it, you know, something that we should attend to all the time. You're human. And I've been pondering this verse, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to write about it, but I'm going to write about something where it said Jesus learned obedience in the things that he suffered. And what it says to me is that Jesus had maturing to do too. You know, he was born immature. He was born a baby. So he had to learn things. He had to mature. It says he never sinned, but is doing something stupidly because you don't know any better because you're immature a sin, or is this part of immaturity, right? So I can't imagine that Jesus always did everything perfectly. He didn't sin, but he had to learn some things. And you do too. Plus you're a sinner. And so he sympathizes with us and he sees our humanity. So please be gracious with yourself as much as you hopefully are gracious with your children as they're learning and they're trying to be the person that God calls them to be, and they're not doing it perfectly, that you would do it with yourself as well. So Martha said she's been sending us questions, and she now sent us 15 questions. I don't know why it didn't go on our feed is for some reason.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch on our text feed. And that's the deal. There's been days in these last couple of weeks when it's been hard at my house, just keeping it real with you. I lock my door. I come in my office, I lock my door, I put my headphones on, I put on some praise music. I have to shut down. I've got a day bed over here on the side. I lay on it and I take a nap because my body, my brain, my spirit, my soul is completely exhausted. And so, yeah, where I would love all of this, it's not always easy. Sometimes it's really hard, and it's okay to take a break and to give yourself a time out. And yeah, just cry, breathe, call a girlfriend, and don't engage. And I've chosen that sometimes just to completely disengage. 100%. Talk to nobody outside of my little four walls here. So we see you and we hear you. And, there's some gals that are saying, I feel lost and hopeless, Lynn. We're going to continue to lift you up in prayer. And I want to encourage you, Lynn, to reach out to support, call a domestic violence shelter or support group, call the 1-800 number, get the help that you so desperately want. And it's right there available to you. It's just a matter of picking up the phone. Get safe.
That may be the next right step for you to take. Okay.
Definitely.
So when you feel helpless, this is really important because you're not helpless, right? It feels helpless right now. And again, I'd encourage you to go back and look at some of the Conquer videos about helplessness in the very beginning, where we talked about the Pavlov's dog. Sometimes when you've been victimized again and again and again, you grow up with a helpless mindset, a victim mindset that I can't fix this. I can't do anything. I'm helpless. I need a rescuer. I need a savior to fix me or fix this. And I can't do it myself. And maybe it's too big, like you can't do all of it yourself for right now, but you can take some steps and you can make a phone call. You can tell the truth. You can do some of these things. And as you take those next steps, there will be other people who may help you take the next step as you reveal the truth, as you call the shelter, as you do things. So you're not helpless as it feels, but you must start taking a few steps forward so that you can enlist the help of other people who can help you take the next steps forward. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, and it's risky to invite somebody in, but you can do it.
And joining Conquer was your step. Look, here you are. All right. And you're getting information, but are you taking steps with that information? Information is useless. If I get all kinds of information, I never do anything with it. It's useless unless I take the steps in line with that information. So I'd like you to really challenge yourself to take a next step and put on the feed. What next step are you going to take so that you're accountable to that? And that may be the biggest hairy, audacious goal that you can take is calling the shelter. But say, hey, I'm going to call the shelter before day's end. And now you can do it. And we're going to ask you about it tomorrow. So I would encourage you to put that in the feed and put something in the feed of the next step that you're going to take. One baby step forward. One baby step forward. All right, here's a couple other questions about this topic. There's a bunch of other more generic questions about stuff. We'll save those till next time because I need to leave in another minute. But how do you detach yet still express the fruit of the Spirit toward him? I recognize who he is now and it hurts. That's hard to hide.
The hurt is hard to hide, and he's going to feed on your hurt. And so when you think of detaching and remembering, he's probably pretty indifferent. I'm hearing some of that in that space. And I guess checking in, this is the big one. I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to pray because I think this does, I don't know that we can even answer this in 30 seconds. And I know I want to be sensitive, Leslie, of your time. So I'm going to pray while you speak.
I don't know if you can express all of the fruit of the Spirit all of the time to everybody all of the time. So I would encourage you to look at them: love, joy, peace, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self-control. Against such there is no law. So where would you get snagged? Would you get snagged in being self-controlled in front of him? Would you get snagged in being joyful in front of him? Would you get snagged in being peaceful in front of him? Where are you going to get snagged? Right? Because I think that it confounds our enemies when they don't get the best of us. When we can still, I think of stories that I've read in concentration camps and other kinds of stories where people are in horrible situations and they don't get snagged by the other person. So when we get snagged and they pull us and rob us of our fruit because they're in a bad mood or because they're an evil person or whatever, we got hooked. And so how do we maintain, and it may not be all of them that you can work on, but what if you just said to yourself, I'm going to practice kindness, no matter how cruel, that doesn't mean enabling him. All right. So or I'm going to practice patience, no matter how impatient he is with me or how ugly he is with me or how abusive he is with me. Patience doesn't mean necessarily long suffering. I'm going to let him get away with it, but I may be patient in the way I say it. I may be patient in giving him a second chance if it's not dangerous. So how am I going to express patience? And I would pray over that. I would say, Lord, these are your fruit and you want them in my life. And I'm with this person right now. So how do I express kindness? It might be by saying, hey, I love you very much. And I'm going to say this as kindly as I can, but I don't know if I can live with you. That could be kindness. That could be patience, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, I love you so much and you're wonderful. That would be hypocrisy. That would be hypocrisy. And I think that's where the confusion comes in, because our church actually asks you to do that. Like praise him, talk about all his good points, lift him up, feed it, and it's crazy when you're living with a wicked, evil person. I'm not saying every man is like that, but when you are living with a wicked, evil person who only wants you to talk about their good, but will never look at their dark side, and their dark side is causing a lot of damage, it is hypocrisy. It's like the emperor's new clothes. It's like being one of the liars that says, oh, you look great in your naked costume. You don't look great. But how do you say that in the fruit of the Spirit? If Jesus was always in the fruit of the Spirit, he didn't always say things real nice to people if you look at things. So what does that mean? So don't put a caricature of that on yourself. And I would just say, where do you get snagged? That would be your first question. And then I would ask the Lord, how would the fruit of the Spirit look in this situation? And see what he says to you. And see what he says.
Yeah. And as I was praying, that's what I came up with, is like, pick one area, how do you want to see kindness manifested in your relationships and in your conversation, or self-control, whatever it might be. All right, Leslie.
All right, so there are a couple other questions. Sorry we got snagged in our tech feed. We couldn't get them, but we've got them now. So some of these are more generic questions that we would ask in a Conquer call. So we're trying to keep the questions related to this module of confidence. And so save your questions for your Conquer call. As far as I know, there's not a video on a fear of abandonment, but I think it's a good one. But I think you're trying to control that fear by having him do something or you doing something versus him doing something, but you're really not addressing the fear. Okay. So I would encourage you to write out, what does it mean if he leaves first? What does it mean? And then it means that I'm unlovable. Oh, really? Is that the truth? And if I'm unlovable, what does that mean? And keep going, and then the next word, what does that mean? What does that? So you have some work to do about this abandonment. And it's not about controlling the way things end up with him and you. It's about, what are you so afraid of? Because Jesus says, I will never leave you or forsake you. I am here always, even to the ends of the earth. So you're not abandoned, but you're telling yourself some lies about if someone leaves you, about yourself. All right. So I will die. I will not be okay. I can't handle whatever you're telling yourself. I'm worthless. I'm loveless. Whatever you're telling yourself, that's your work to do right now. So sweet sister, do your work. Don't try to orchestrate how the situation happens so you don't have to do your work. Do your work, because that's what God's opening up for you to do. He doesn't want you to feel or fear abandonment, because you're not abandoned. You're loved, and he loves you, and he's holding you by your right hand. So you're not abandoned, but you're telling yourself some lies about that's snagging you down. All right, well, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go get some lipstick and I got to make my coffee so I can do my 9 o'clock. If you are part of our people pleasing class, head over to the people pleasing page, because we are going to do another bit of teaching there. But I've got to close for today because I've got to do a few things before the next step. And sorry for being so real, but it is real. And that's why we have to do it. But thank you so much. And we're going to do this one more week. So if you've got any other questions about this Conquer Journey, please, please, please send them to us. Be on our Conquer call next week, not call, but Facebook Live. We'll just kind of summarize everything. This has been your Conquer Journey. You can go through this as many times as you want. And there's tons of other videos in the library that you can go through. And we're going to start doing some Facebook Lives on implementing the videos. I think that's really important. So you've gotten all this information, but you haven't implemented it all, right? We want you to implement it where you are in your walk, the next right step, the next right step. So I challenge you between now and next week to make a little list for yourself about what are like the 3 next right steps that you sense God asking you to take in this growth aspect that you're in. What are the 3 next right steps for you so that you're holding yourself accountable before the Lord and put them in the feed? What are the next 3 right steps for you? And if you don't know what the 3 ones are, what's the first one? Number 1, what's the next right step? And put it in there. All right. So that we can help you take action. Leanne, would you close us in prayer?
I would be honored. Father, I just thank you so much for this time that we are able to come together and learn and grow, be stretched, ask questions, encourage, and hold each other accountable. I thank you, Lord, that you are so faithful. You are faithful to meet us where we're at. I pray that you would guide and direct each one of our steps, that you would give us the energy and the wisdom to continue to lean into you and to not run away, but to grow closer to you. We thank you for this time that we were able to gather. Guide and protect us as we move into our day. Be with Leslie, give her all the energy that she wants to have to muster up to continue to serve tirelessly this community. And we thank you for technology, that we can be together even though we're apart. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Take care, ladies. Bye-bye.